Hello, this is the Monday Agenda. The Monday Agenda today is delighted to make another visit to REPOA, and we're delighted to talk to Dr. Lucas Katera, who is the Director of Collaborations and Capacity Building, looking onto the survey that they recently did on literacy. Dr. Katera, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Maybe before we speak about this survey, Dr. Katera, I'm sure my viewers would be very keen to know who is this Dr. Lucas Katera and your capacity, of course, I've mentioned, but your role at REPOA.
Thank you very much. As you mentioned correctly, my name is Lucas Katera. I am a Director of Capacity Building and Collaborative Research. As you may be aware, REPOA is a research and capacity building institution. Of course, we are focusing on research around the growth, inclusive growth and development. So my focus, actually my area, is to ensure that we have research capacity in the country. So in doing so, I coordinate collaborative research. This year, the research that we normally do with foreign institutions that have higher capacity than we have. Therefore, in teaming up, we build local research capacity. But also, I am also coordinating the trainings. We usually train young researchers on areas around research methodology, around the writing skills, around the issues on research. So when it comes to capacity building, I am the coordinating unit. So basically that is the role I play.
And how long have you worked with REPOA, Doctor?
I've been with REPOA for about 20 years now.
20 years?
Yes.
Wow. So you're almost, as we celebrate 25 years of REPOA, you're almost celebrating the same.
This means that I joined REPOA when it was about 5-6 years.
Yes, putting up the strong foundation that we celebrate today.
Absolutely.
Doctor, you had recently worked together with the Ministry of Education and the World Bank on illiteracy, and World Illiteracy Day was commemorated on the 8th of September. So tell us, what was the theme first of this study? Yeah,
the study was called the Indicators for Service Delivery Indicators Survey. Okay. And this survey basically aimed at benchmarking service delivery indicators against which you can measure impact in the future. Okay. The initial focus was on health and education, but I think the discussion now will be on the education indicators.
Okay, but you've done education and health.
Yes.
Okay, I will probably find more time to also discuss health. Yes. Because these two sectors are really my passion. I'm passionate on them.
You are very much welcome.
Yes. So tell us more about the study.
Yeah, this study is done actually in 5 African countries. The pilot was done in 2010 in Tanzania and Senegal. The results were very appealing and informed now the rollout to other countries. The first round actually was done in 2014, the second round in 2017. So we are lucky that Tanzania can track development of these indicators for 3 waves of the survey, 2010, 2014, and 2017. Okay. Yeah, but the other countries, except Senegal and Tanzania, they can track for 2 years. Okay. Yeah, this survey, usually when we have problems in the education sector, I would say also in the health sector, there has been a tendency to think that the performance is poor because actually the budget allocation to these sectors is not sufficient. But then there was another methodology and the other studies that have been done elsewhere to see that the problem and realize that the problem might not necessarily be in the budget side. There could be other problems. So the studies informed that it could be also the problem of budget, definitely, but it also could be the problem of expertise of those who are delivering service. Are they competent enough to deliver the required services? Okay. But also, it's about the commitment. You can have the good budget allocated to a sector, but then people are not committed. Mm-hmm. They are not at the school when they are supposed to be there. Okay. They are at school, but they are not actually teaching. Mm-hmm. So all this were investigating to see whether they account for the poor performance.
Doctor, you've mentioned pertinent issues. And I wouldn't really wish to, and I won't be doing justice to the program if I do not give each issue the prominence of time it deserves. So let's go on to the first issue. You said the first measure was on
budget.
On the budget.
Yes.
If the budget allocated to the education sector is sufficient to address the challenges of education.
Is it sufficient? That was the question.
Is it sufficient?
Yes, that was the question.
Okay.
But of course, that was really the area that everyone is thinking that poor performance in the sector is because the budget is not sufficiently enough to deliver the.
So these issues are vis-a-vis the performance of the sectoral performance.
Exactly.
Okay, so the budget allocated to the Ministry of Education vis-a-vis the performance of the education sector.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, I'm interested on that. So we will go to the second and third and fourth issue. Let's start with that. The budget, be it governmental, be it even your personal budget, Dr. Lucas, the budget is never enough. But I'm happy to learn what were some of the findings in relation to the budget allocated to the education sector.
Yeah, basically, if you look at the sectors, education and also health, but mostly in education, has been taking it's one of the sectors that has been taking the biggest budget overall. Correct. I mean, the percentage of budget allocated to the education sector has been the biggest. Of course, it comprised many levels. You have the primary, you have secondary, you have tertiary education, and with the loans at the tertiary education, the budget is becoming too huge. Okay. Yeah, but then the challenge that we have seen in the over time it has been increasing. Of course, not at the level that is required. Okay. Yeah, but then it's increasing over time. However, yes, there has been some challenges on the way when it comes from the central until the service unit. Some studies have indicated that there are leakages here and there, which eventually results into the money that ends up at the unit level to be less than actually what had been planned before.
Okay. Doctor, from your explanation, and allow me to interject, the loopholes have continued to decrease the allocated amount of the budget. So that means there's a possibility, there's a chance that the money that has been allocated, the loopholes, have reduced that amount and hence reduced the efficiency of the education sector. Is that true? Is that one of the findings?
Partly, yes.
Okay.
Partly, yes.
All right.
Yeah, but there are several other reasons that I explained.
The
poor performance.
And you did mention at the beginning that you've had this survey looking onto the very same indicator on the budget, first and foremost. You've done this in 2010, 2014, and 2017. Did the findings that you got this year still reflect the same for the previous studies as well?
Actually, most of the indicators indicate that there have been improvements over time. And some of the indicators are improving faster than the others, but some of them, I mean, the change are quite insignificant. Okay. Yeah, but then on average, on general term, is that there has been improvements of these indicators, of budget indicators, allocation, and of course control of the leakages from 2010, 2014, and 2017.
If you look onto the variance, Doctor, what the education sector needs and what the government allocates, how are we faring? Are we saying that we are probably 30% short, 40% short?
I don't have exactly figure, but what is quite clear is that always disbursement has been shortfall of the actual allocation. And
the loophole.
Exactly, and this has been actually for almost all sectors, not the education sector itself. And this is because actually we spend the money after collecting them. We plan when we don't have money, but then spending is when you actually get the money. And it definitely, here and there, the budget, the collection has not met the needed expenditure. And of course, we have also good support from development partners, but all this is a shortfall of the actual needs.
But of all the indicators, what would you say the contribution of budgets towards the declining of the service in the education sector? What percentage would you say that because of shortfall in budget, the education sector has been hit by 10%?
So many percentage. I think it's difficult to answer that question, but generally you always really see that there has been shortages. Yeah, I mean, the number of classrooms are quite, despite all the efforts that the government has made to ensure that they increase the number of classrooms, given the advocates and of course the civic education on the importance of taking children to school, which has actually resulted into more people demanding school and therefore enrollment increasing. That one has pushed for the government demand to build more schools. That one has happened, but of course it is still not yet at the level of the demand. So you could see that infrastructure is increasing, but not at the rate of increasing the demand for the
And this is basically budget allocation.
It's budget allocation.
Let's go to the next issue, Doctor.
Yes.
Now, so we've tackled the budget. Maybe we'll come back to it. What was the other issue that you are looking at?
The other indicator is really on the infrastructure availability. Yes, infrastructure availability is very important. I mean, this was really about ensuring that the school has basic infrastructure, has electricity, has toilets that meet standard of the school. There are textbooks for teaching, for teachers and for pupils, and those are the things that we were investigating water at the school because it has implications. You know, hygiene requires that you have water at school, children can access the best toilets, and then they don't have to, you know, ladies also, they require specific type of toilets, and probably with more number of pit latrines than the male children. So all these are the basic indicators. They should meet some minimum standards. So when you look at it, so we had results around this, around this indicator.
And what were some of the findings?
Some of the findings shows that there are improvements over time, but of course, most of the schools still not have enough minimum required infrastructure. For instance, it's about 44% of the schools in the survey that was conducted in 2016-17, the 2017 survey. 44% of the schools had the infrastructure that meet minimum standard. Yeah, I mean, when I say infrastructure, I'm talking of electricity, I'm talking of water, I'm talking of
toilets, or library, and books. Yes.
Exactly. So I will come to books as a supply.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So this 44% had, and this is the improvement from the 2014 survey,
which was
41%.
And so now 44. And the current one is this is the recent one that
the recent one. So what I'm trying to say is that you can see that over time there have been improvements, but then it's not really significant because it's from 41% to 44%, 3% for the period of 3 years. So you can see that improvement is there, but of course, if it has, I mean, we need to go faster than, otherwise we need more years, many more years before you can get, if in every year you can improve 1%, then you need more years to get to 100%. So we are going forward, but probably we need to increase the speed of ensuring that we have minimum infrastructure.
Has this to do anyhow, somehow, with the allocation of budget as well?
Yeah, partly yes, but also partly with local level capacity to ensure, because there you can actually have the same budget in two councils, but in one council you see the infrastructure improving compared to that council. So it's really about allocation, but also capacity at the local level to ensure that the way they spend the money, you get the value for money. Yeah. So there are other findings also about, you see, like 54% of, I mean, you have, if you look at the toilet itself, because of the sensitivity of the toilet itself, if you look at the toilet itself, about 54% of schools had the toilets that meet the required standard. But so you have male, female toilets, and then they have all important infrastructure like water and so on and so forth. But again, 61% of them do not have, although they meet the minimum standard, but the privacy issue between the pupils and teachers. 61% of the schools didn't have toilets for teachers separated from those of the pupils. And you know, this is like, you need, the teachers should have their own privacy because they don't.
Of course, all right, correct. Totally agreed, yeah.
Exactly, so you have this. And then the challenge, the biggest challenge is that when you look at the rural, you disaggregate this data by urban and rural. Yes. You realize that the rural, the problem is more serious in rural than in urban areas. Correct. Yeah, so that's something that you may also want to, I mean, it's something that the policymakers together with the other education stakeholders should consider, that there's inequality between urban.
I will come to that, Doctor, in terms of these wonderful findings. How well are they disseminated to the policymakers, to other education stakeholders? But let's proceed on the
Okay, and then when you look at the supplies, like teaching, textbooks, yeah, and then we focused on few subjects, not every subject. So basically we are focusing on English, Kiswahili, and in mathematics textbooks.
Okay.
We know there are other textbooks that are required for the student, but we thought let's focus on these 3 subjects, basically because of their importance in the future career of children. And we realized that it's about 20% of pupils that have access to textbooks of mathematics, English, and Kiswahili, 20% of students. So you can see that about 80% of children actually would either 4 or 5 children sharing a book. But then if you take the average that every child should have a book, then it's about 20% of children that were seen to have this supplies.
Being a supply issue, is it again related to ability of parents to buy those books or ability of publishers to avail those books? Why do we have such a discrepancy?
Yeah, again, that's a nice question, because some of you could go into the classroom and then you see teacher teaching mathematics. There are no books for the children, but then in the store there could be books. So it might also be, again, the problem of management at the school level to ensure. So it's possible that people may question that it's not possible for only 20% to have, because we have supplied enough books at the schools. But then the question is not about having the books at the school, it's children accessing the books.
Correct.
So it's about 20%, maybe I should put it that way, 20% of the children were found access the books at the school. Yeah, but then you could, to some extent, to few cases, you could get this, you could see the books in the stores of the school, but then not the students. So it's also about improving the management of the school and perhaps increasing the inspection at the school to ensure that whatever supplies are provided by the government for the schools, then children can access them.
You did mention, Doctor, before we move to the next parameter, but you did mention the issues of electricity. I'm not saying that electricity is not important on my next question as we move to the next indicator, but I'm trying to imagine a student, why would they require, example, lights if they do if there's day scholars, for instance?
Actually, one of the things that we investigated is the light at the classroom, whether it's really enough light to ensure that children who are at the back can see the front. And then that's where we saw the importance of electricity at the school, because some of the schools really needed more additional light for children to be able to read the materials from the board. But also it's important to have electricity at the school, because then it enables the school to, like, printing their own examinations, printing their own tests. So that one also reduce the costs of school operation, because then otherwise the parents have to contribute for this to be done at the kiosk outside the school. And of course, it's also not manageable, because at the kiosk, the examination can get leakages and so on and so forth. So if that can be managed at the school level, the better.
The next indicator, Doctor?
The next indicator is about efforts. Efforts of the school. Again, it was, people were overlooking efforts. Efforts, whether the teachers are spending their time at school actually teaching. Yeah, because they could be at school not teaching, doing their own businesses, and they could completely be absent of the school. And we used the kind of methodology. We had something called the announced visit. So in the announced visit, we go at the school, we conduct all these interviews, look at the school's timetable, everything, and then look at the school supplies, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. But then we could also, and then I'll come to the capability of teachers. So we could also conduct testing the teachers, whether they are able to deliver, they are able to, exactly, the contents. So that was done in the announced visit. Then you could spend like 2 or 3 days in other schools and come in an announced visit. In the announced visit, you just come there without informing the teacher that we are coming, the head teacher that we are coming. And in the unannounced visit, you will actually, that's where we are assessing absenteeism rate.
Okay.
Because the day that we are coming, announce the visit, everybody will be there. Because they know we'll be here at some point.
Could be a consequence to that.
Exactly. So when you go there, everybody who will not be there is not considered absent, as long as the head teacher is here aware that someone is not here today because maybe it's delayed, he has gone for, say,
barrier clinics.
Those are not the absenteeism. But if someone is not there and the teacher is not aware, head teacher is not aware,
that is what
that the absenteeism rate.
Wow.
So that one we had 14% the absenteeism rate.
14%.
Yeah, it's not very bad.
Bad.
Yeah, but it's bad actually. But then we had 29% absent from classroom. They are at the school, but the timetable shows that now they should be teaching mathematics, but they are not teaching mathematics. Because in the first visit, we also took the timetable. So when you go there, I can look, this teacher has a mathematics session now in standard 5, but then you see them talking under the tree. So that also is present at the school, but absent from classroom.
Of course.
So in this case, in total, you get 43% absenteeism from classroom.
That is close to 50%.
Exactly, which is something that you need attention to that. Of course, again, over time, there are the actual improvement in these indicators, because in the survey that was conducted in 2014, you had 53% absenteeism rate from the classroom. Okay. When you combine absenteeism from school and absenteeism from classroom, even when you are at school, it was 53, but now it's 43. So we have 10 percentage point within 3 years, and we see that this is improvement.
You are watching the Monday Agenda, and with me on the Monday Agenda today is Dr. Lucas Katera, who is the Director of Collaborations and Capacity Building here at REPOA, and we're looking onto the survey that they did on delivery of services in the education sector, jointly between REPOA, the Ministry of Education, and the World Bank. And we're looking onto the indicators that they found out, and luckily Tanzania has actually been able to document this is indicators for the previous 3 sessions, and we're looking onto these indicators, and we've looked onto the budget issues and how they relate to either deterioration or improvement of the education sector. We've looked onto the issues of infrastructure. We've looked onto, and now we've looked onto the issues of supplies as well. And now, Doctor, you want to say
the knowledge now.
The knowledge, yes, of the teachers,
exactly,
if they have the capacity to deliver the content to the students.
Yeah, okay, this one was done again by actually conducting a test for mathematics, English, and pedagogy to selected teachers at the school. And of course, the performance was mixed. Mathematics, the performance was quite good for teachers, and because the average score was 71% for teachers. Of course, you have those who scored 90, and then you have few who scored less than 50, but on average, 71% was quite, yeah, exactly, quite impressive. But the English was not impressive because the average performance was 44. Yeah, so this is slightly low, and we thought that maybe that's where the debates about whether delivering the lecture at Tanzanian schools should be in Kiswahili or in English, because actually the teachers are not performing very well at the English
44%
average performance, and this has to teach the children to get a 100.
Yes, and not only that, you know, a teacher gets 44 to teach a student to get 100, and English is I don't know, I went to primary school and secondary school many years. Is it still a medium for communication in schools? Do teachers still use English to train, to teach students in school?
Yeah, these were public schools, and public schools, you know, the teaching of English as a subject, but then English is not an official language at the school.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the thing. But then basically we had to test them because this one prepares children to go to secondary, where the median is English, and then from there, that's English. Kiswahili now turns to be the subject when you go to secondary school. But then mathematics in primary school is taught in Kiswahili, science in Kiswahili, all the other subjects in Kiswahili except English is a subject. So when you get to secondary, it's the other way around. Kiswahili is a subject, everything is taught in English.
On an average, 44%. Okay.
Yeah, and then we had another one which really also needed attention. It's pedagogy.
Okay.
Pedagogy is actually that skill of transferring knowledge from teacher to a pupil.
Okay.
So pedagogy was actually, performance was quite low. Average was 35%.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is an area of...
If you're looking onto the English and pedagogy, yes, for the previous years as well, how are we?
Exactly. Again, the good thing is that improvement in this subject, you have improvement, but the improvement is quite minimal. Actually, mathematics has been quite high consistently for the 3 surveys, and this has been quite low consistently. You find improvement of 1 to 2 percentage points for the span of 2 years, and we think that, okay, maybe more efforts are needed in this area to make sure that the education sector becomes competitive.
Maybe not to bracket, so that my viewer and, of course, the policymakers, development partners, those in the education sector supporting the transformation and growth of the education sector. When you say more needs to be done, would you probably break it down?
I'm trying to, the thing is that we are now, the world is becoming a village.
Yes.
And we can't isolate Tanzania from the rest of the world. So our children must be competitive internationally.
Correct.
Yeah, I am not saying we are not competitive, apparently, because this survey was done in Kenya, in Uganda, Nigeria, and Senegal.
Okay.
So when you look into cross-country of this, you really find that the problems we are facing in Tanzania is also common in many other countries. But that should not be an excuse for us to increase. We should take advantage that by actually surpassing other countries, we are making our children more competitive. So it's not like, okay, Kenya is also doing not very, Kenya was doing slightly better in in English, but then Tanzania was doing better in mathematics than Kenya. And of course, so we have common problems in these countries, but that should be taken as a challenge, and so that we can be able to compete with other countries. So when I say more should be done, I am trying to think, maybe it's looking at the world is changing very fast. And the curricula should also respond in the changing worlds, changes that are happening. So it's important to consider these things like, the government like setting a budget for on-job training for teachers, because some of them, you talk to them, they were last trained when they were in the colleges 20 years ago. There are a lot of changes that are happening now, and that will inform them to change. Some of them cannot use the computer, and I think it's important. So all these things will suggest, is what I'm saying, more need to be done. So it's like ensuring that you have on-job training, but also something like absenteeism, you can actually do well by increasing the inspection, strengthening the inspection department of the ministry, so that they can have also unannounced visits, several of them at the schools.
Before Dr. Lucas, before you say let's have unannounced visits, have you gone to the core reason as to why they're absent? Was that part of the commission study?
It wasn't part of the commission, but of course it informed. The question, the thing of survey is that we have seen the performance is not that much at the level required level. Transition rate is not very good. We have gender parity so we thought maybe we need to study what is happening in these schools. But then immediately you do this one research, you realize another area that you want to dig more. So I think it's important to look into those aspects that people are absent. Is it about incentive that they are not there? Is it about the infrastructure at the schools? If the school doesn't have a toilet, then you have to go to my own home for toilet. Then probably I just go in the afternoon, I may not come back, depending on the distance. So it's something that one may want to investigate more and see what is the cause.
Doctor, any other indicator? I know you still have several, or have you finished the indicators that you had said?
Those are the indicators.
Those are the indicators. Those are the indicators and the key findings.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So looking on to we don't do, and this has always been my question when I talk to researchers like yourselves, Doctor, we don't do research to put them in the shelves. We do research to inform, and then after inform, we also push to the best ability we can action so that, the recommendations are taken into consideration. I want to believe that your research went to as far as the recommendations, so you would like to cite a few recommendations based on the findings you've come with the study.
Yeah, okay, let me mention a few recommendations, and perhaps then I will come back to what we have been doing to ensure that it's not being part of the documents in your shelves, yes, but it gets into the policies. Excellent. Yeah, of course, definitely I mentioned some of them in the discussion, like for instance, improve the inspection. We know like absenteeism from the school, for no reason, you can improve that by strengthening inspection. We know that there are inspection departments at the ministry level, at the local government level. There's the actual department that is responsible for inspection, zonal inspection department. So this one can be strengthened.
But again, not knowing why they're absent, this then remains an hypothesis. Exactly. I want to believe.
That's the thing. So probably, the department can think about studying more on why is it that they are absent, yeah, and if there are problems that are associated with the absenteeism, then they address them. Yeah. If it continues, then maybe now it's about behavior change, then improving inspection can do. So I fully agree that further analysis on why these people are absent from the schools is important. So that is an area that may need strengthening, but also infrastructure. Of course, the capacity building at the local level to ensure that you have value for money. Because at some point, I said it before, you may have money, the same amount of money allocated to two schools, but then you look into the infrastructure, the two schools, they are quite different. And then possibly you can also see that it's not about misusing the money, but maybe it's the capacity of identifying the right constructor. And so these are the things you may want to improve at the local level, but also improve also issues around the misuse of money if it's there. Okay. Yeah, so you can improve infrastructure at the local level. But of course, the teacher also should work at the decent environment. So ensure that the schools have infrastructure that is special for teachers. Okay. If they have to be separated, you have like, if you want to have you may wish to make sure that all the teachers have separate toilet from the students. They don't have to rush with the student, because even the respect of the student to teachers,
it commands respect.
Exactly, goes down. So those are the things you can improve. But also on the training, on job training is an important aspect that stakeholders, including the government, should consider. Okay. That you have the teachers after every 3 years,
they do a
refresh training to reflect what is actually happening in the world, to ensure that they are moving with the world. And if people are moving now from using, like, you can get the school that they cannot even use PowerPoint, many of them. But then it's the budget for a small computer and a projector. It's not that much big. And that one can simplify and increase incentive for teachers to teach, rather than using and of course, even the students taught that way can also be an incentive for them to increase their efforts to study. So, but this requires training. Even when you have the budget, but people haven't trained, you will see the projector and the computer at the head teacher's office, but it's not used because there's no one. So it's important to consider on-job training as part of the
improvement.
Yeah, exact part of improvement. Yes. Yeah. So let me come back to the other question about how do we make sure that our findings, these messages are getting. Right people, yeah, yes. Of course. Yeah, as a research institution, we are not able to push. But then what we are trying to do is to ensure that all the stakeholders can use your findings in their day-to-day activities. For instance, these findings have been presented to the government, where the top government officials in these ministries, Ministry of Education, where they're including permanent secretary, are there. So they get the messages and the suggestions. So, and then we can follow up with them. If, like here, we had a big report which was a bit technical and complicated, so we had to write a policy brief that actually pick key messages only for the policymakers, that these are findings, these are suggestions on addressing the problem. So that one we produce for them. But also we know the other stakeholders that are addressing educational needs. Institutions like Haki Elimu, organizations that are dealing with pushing the government and the other stakeholders to improve the education. So we also make sure that when we are presenting these findings to the government, they are part of that. And of course, you can always invite one of the person from the institution to be a discussant or to comment on the findings. So you have the main presentation, you have 3 or 4 people to comment on the findings, including the government, but also the civil society organizations that are focusing on the education. So in that way, we know Haki Elimu will use their results to push for their agenda, but the government will use their results to improve the way they interact with the education sector. So that's how we normally do. And we do this repeatedly, but also we use the media. For instance, like this kind of media, but also ensuring that whenever we do these presentations, we invite different media outlets to help us, because you will all do the presentation in Dar es Salaam or Dodoma, but then you want the people from Mbeya, Iringa to get these messages. And of course, it's also possible that they were part of the sample. So when they get this kind of information through the media, that's how we do to ensure that our outputs are getting.
Okay. I mean, Dr. Lucas, I really commend on the great works that REPOA does. And I've spoken to the ED, Executive Director, several times, and I really told him that, Doctor, you know, this rich content that you're producing out there shouldn't just end up here. You should go there. And my question as to why, in relation to the answer you just provided, is because I'm looking onto the numbers that you've shared, 1% increase, 2% increase per year. And I'm wondering now, is it now the laxity of the government to take forward the action that you're proposing? Is it that the message is not disseminated thoroughly to them? Are you part and parcel of the think tank to advise the government on what next in the education sector? What next in the health sector, Doctor?
Yeah, I think the challenge is that we are actually improving from the very low base.
Okay.
So you are starting pushing everything when you have demand of everything and you have limited budget. You are trying to...
Limited budgets. Okay, all right. I wanted to make sure I heard that right. Yeah.
You see, you are trying to sensitize children to go to school at the school age children. And it happens that you have children up to 12 years who have not been at the school. So if you are able to do this advertisement correctly, and if all of them were turned and start going to school, then you have a problem of infrastructure, does not meet the minimum standard. So you are actually trying to push many things at a go. And unfortunately, it's difficult to leave something aside. So, I mean, looking forward, what are we expecting is like now we have, for the last few years, since 2020, since 2000, when we started PRSP and the enrollment, we had this national education development plans, primary and secondary, primary PEDIP, secondary CEDIP, which actually increased the enrollment to a very large extent. And then during that time, you had a lot of children at home, bringing them back to school. And then now they are at school, you are now start missing the schools are overcrowded, classes are not enough. So you want to move now to improve. So initially we were discussing about really ensuring that you have the quantity enough. Now the discussion is going about the quality now. Quality. And the discussion is here about ensuring that children have enough space in school, they are not overcrowded. I mean, you have standard number of children in a classroom of a given size. This is the discussion. So, I mean, looking forward, you can see that there are efforts that are going on. So the speed may not actually meet the supply. That's the challenge.
Doctor, I'm removing you for just this question. As a person, not as REPOA, so this statement is basically your own. If you had the mandate, if you had that one key to unlock the potential of education sector in Tanzania, what would you do?
I mean, The problem is that I cannot talk completely as a non-researcher because then you have done research in something.
Yes, but if you had the power to change one thing in the education sector, if you had the power to say, I want the education sector in Tanzania to be this, and I believe but through this we're going to have a transformative education that addresses the gaps that we have in our country.
Yeah, I mean, there are different levels of education.
Okay.
So at the primary school, definitely I will ensure that infrastructure are enough and incentive to the service providers is in place so that the school environment becomes good for both children and teachers. But then as you go further up, like in the universities, I can see some kind of mismatch between the kind of supply and demand for knowledge. And I mean, unemployment is a challenge not only for Tanzania, for many other countries. Last week we had released the Afrobarometer survey, and then we had the SDGs comparison between countries, and you could see unemployment being a challenge for almost all East African countries. Now the question, but then when we talk to employers, and then you ask them, why should they think of employing, I mean, a foreign company has invested in Tanzania on something, and then they would look from experts from India, China. Why shouldn't you take those from Tanzania? You have a lot of graduates in Tanzania, but then they will tell you that actually the knowledge that I need is not available in this country. So that, what I will do is ensuring that you have dialogue between the demand for labor and the supply for labor, so that the demand side of the labor market, these employers, can influence the kind of curricula that is provided by the learning institutions. And this has to come across university and the vocational training centers. In that's how I would want to see this marriage between the institutions, so that whoever from supply side, demand side is ready to receive it.
Doctor, that's a very powerful testimony, and I'm taking it. Be rest assured I will put into practice sometime. Doctor, we're almost coming to the end of the Monday agenda. I still wish to dig further onto the report. And we'll do health sector, and I please request your time that we do it sooner, when the report is still very hot. In a very few words, what is your imagination, what is your vision of the education sector in the next coming years?
Now, I can see that apparently, at least for what the plan in place are, we are moving in the right direction. Everyone is talking about improving the improvement of the quality of education, ensuring all things are done. But then I will actually appreciate if I see that whatever now is being planned and discussed actually getting to implementation, because there has been also differences between actually the plan and what is actually execution. The discussion and the views of the people on the education sector are very positive. Actually, the government is very positive in ensuring that we have quality education, commitment of teachers, you have all the incentives in place, but then actually implementing that will actually result into the best direction towards our education. So I look at it very positive, but also I think the positivity will actually be realized if execution actually follows what the plan are in place.
Any burning issue, Doctor? This is your floor now. Talk to my audience. Any burning issue that you would really wish to let our viewers or let Tanzanians through the Capital TV to know about the study, about, the education sector? Will spare time for health next time.
Education sector, I will actually still go back to ensuring that the education sector actually prepares the student and the pupils to get into the labor market, ready labor market. So ensure that the balance between, the dialogue between the education provider and the employers is there. Yeah, that's something that I will push for that. But of course, I know also some issues around gender parity in the education sector. That as you move from lower to higher level education sector, you see gender parity.
It's a bottleneck.
Exactly. So it's important to address this gender parity. There are different ways through which you can address it. Actually, the most important way to address it is to deal with, to make sure that service delivery is of the high quality. Because it's actually the female children that are dealing with a lot of works like collection of water. So if this is addressed, then you have more time for these children to concentrate in the education sector, and they can actually compete with their male counterparts.
Dr. Lucas Katera is the Director of Collaborations and Capacity Building, was with me looking onto the recent survey that REPOA, the Ministry of Education and the World Bank did on the survey, that they conducted the survey for delivery indicators on the education sector, service delivery indicators survey, looking onto the education and health. And I've requested for his time next time to do the health sector. So we shall be doing the health sector. Keep watching the Monday agenda. But for me, Doctor, is really to thank you. This is really helpful. And as a media partner, we shall make sure that this program reaches many people so that many are informed, and of course, many take action to that. So really thank you for the good work. Thanks to REPOA. Please convey our regards, the Ministry of Education. I believe they will be watching, but they have the findings as well. They know, and they will push for this development so that the education sector can really transform lives of Tanzanians. And with those few remarks, I would like to really thank you for watching the Monday agenda. Until next time, I'm your host, Austin Makani. Thank you for watching.